Business Barbados, the Business Barbados Media Conference. I'm Jewel Ford, I'm your moderator for today. Our guest next to me is Derek Cummins, he's the president of BIBA. Next to him, Professor Avinash Prasad, Special Envoy to Prime Minister Mia Motley, and Keith Miller, the publisher of Business Barbados. I want to say a special welcome as well to all of our viewers at this point, and also to the media who has joined us for this media conference. Just to tell you a little bit about our guests, next to me, Derek Cummins, he's the Managing Director and CEO of Amicorp and Trust Barbados, Bank and Trust Barbados. And he's the CEO, he's based in Barbados, and he's responsible for driving ABT's business development globally. Since 2001, Derek's career has included different executive management positions, primarily related to treasury and portfolio management in Barbados' international sector. And Derek is the current president of BIBA, the Association of Global Business. Next to him is Professor Avinash Prasad. He's a special envoy to the Prime Minister. His career spans finance, public policy, and academia. He's the Emeritus Professor of Gresham College and an advisor to governments on financial policy. He was chair of the CARICOM Commission on the Economy and is currently special envoy to the Prime Minister. He's also the current chair of the Development Committee of the IMF and the World Bank. His titles are way too many to mention. Suffice to say that he was voted one of the top 3 public intellectuals in the world on the financial crisis by a panel for Prospect magazine. And last but definitely not least, Keith Miller. He's a publisher of Business Barbados. Born in England, Keith has been a permanent resident of Barbados since 1978. He's now a Barbadian citizen. He relocated to Barbados to become a teacher and housemaster at MAPS College St. Philip, where he remained for 14 years, including the last 6 as headmaster. In 1983, he and his lovely wife Sally established Miller Publishing Company and launched the Ins and Outs of Barbados Tourist Guide. They also published Ins and Outs of Trinidad and Tobago, St. Vincent and the Grenadines, and Grenada, as well as Barbados in a Nutshell, Visit Barbados, and a broad range of high-quality coffee table books and biographies. He's the founder and publisher of Business Barbados and BusinessBarbados.com. He's written several biographies, and he and his wife Sally, they've been awarded for their work in tourism and entrepreneurship. He's the director and founder member of the Barbados Entrepreneurship Foundation 2009, and present and the instigator, his words, not mine, and driving force behind the BEF's $20 Challenge entrepreneurial competition for secondary school students. Gentlemen, good morning and welcome.
Good morning.
Thank you.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Keith, I'm going to start with you. Why did you insist on publishing Business Barbados when even the economic conference Davos was cancelled in light of the pandemic? So you're clearly a very determined person.
Essentially, there was some risk in going ahead from a financial perspective. The publication it's an annual publication produced in print, digital, and online. And it's entirely dependent upon income from advertising. So clearly with many businesses in slowdown or at standstill, advertising budgets were seriously diminished, if not taken away altogether. So it was a case of taking a leap of faith, but I am a long-standing believer in that we cannot expect the world to come to Barbados to give us business. We have to take Barbados to the world and attract the business. And so therefore the fundamental role of Business Barbados is to attract international investment into the country, investors who possibly would like to come here and live as well. To achieve that, we generally produce articles by experts in the sector that highlight any new developments, that highlight opportunities and so on. And I always reinforce that with first-hand testimonials about investors who've actually come to Barbados, relocated, set up a business, been successful, remained, and in many cases continue to invest further in the country. So that is a great endorsement for what Barbados can offer to an international investor. When we produced the 2020 edition, it was the end of 2019 when I sent it off to go to press, and we were all so confident and positive. Barbados was in a wonderful position. The government had done a good job to stabilize the financial situation and the economy. Steps were being taken to improve business facilitation. The private sector was longing to go. Many people were ready to expand or had expanded. And everybody was so looking forward to a positive, bountiful reward in 2020. And then this thing called COVID came along. And all of a sudden, the whole world literally came to a standstill. Business was turned upside down. And when it came to the point of should I or should I not publish 2021, I felt it was essential. Because as much as we need to keep the Barbados brand alive in the international arena at all times, I personally think that it's particularly important in times of crisis. Just like tourism, international business is very competitive. And Barbados is not competing with the rest of the Caribbean, we're competing globally. So therefore, we have to get the message and get the message out there.
What was the reception to the magazine when you put it out? Because I'm sure a lot of people were saying, but how are you putting this out? Haven't you heard? The world is in lockdown.
I have to say that when I was contemplating whether to do it or not, one of the things I did consider was beyond the financial reward, like would we break even or would we not? Would it cost me money? Would we break even? Beyond the financial reward was the obvious potential to generate a lot of goodwill and, dare I say, respect for having a go, for trying. And that was certainly the reaction when the publication did come out, both in print and online. The feedback was very good, that we maintained a normal quality. Essentially, I guess we were given some kudos for having made the effort to come out in that time of crisis.
Okay. Derek, has the international business sector withstood the test of the pandemic?
Thank you, Joelle. I first also want to congratulate Steve Keith on the publication. The Barbados international business sector has proven itself to be resilient in these times. And that's not just a statement, an assertion without any proof, but we can definitely say that we have evidence that we have been resilient and that over the past 12 months, we have been able to keep a staffing complement pretty much static in that I don't know any of our businesses who have had major layoffs due to COVID. Payroll remains the same. There's been no shortage in hours, no cuts in time. If you just look at subsequent central bank reports quarter after quarter, the most recent, the first quarter of 2021, you would see that we have contributed and continue to contribute to the tax revenue, the corporate tax revenue of the government. And that was a decision that, government made a decision to redo the tax regime, whereby we moved from a very high tax rate to the ranging from 0.75 to 5%. And even then, when the math was done, the scenarios were run, we estimated that the international business sector, the contribution from there would pick up the slack from the loss in the domestic economy. And even with the great loss that we've seen in every other sector for the past 12 months, the international business sector contribution to the corporate tax revenue has been substantial. And what I would want to say also is our ability to move seamlessly from being physically in the office to working remotely. Most of our members, and BIBA is, let me say to start, the member organization of many practitioners in the global and international business sector. Our role is to work with our members and all government agencies to strengthen and smoothen the platform upon which international and all business is done. What has been good, even in this period, has been access to government ministries, to the technocrats, the PSAs, the heads of departments, to work with us. I remember when the first lockdown came, for instance, the government agencies also had to change. They weren't sure how they were going to open up, when they were going to open it. But with discussions with BIBA and others, we saw that the registry was able to work, was able to keep business going. So yes, as long as the platform is there, we are able to continue to do business and continue to grow. And for once, if I may say, not for once, but right now, we don't speak of the strength of international business as some assertion without the evidence, because we have seen it. So if Barbados has a sector which is so able to sustain us in the most difficult of times, as even a global pandemic, those who are tasked with providing the platform upon which these businesses thrive ought to give laser-like focus to the sector. So there's a lot that government has been doing. There's a lot more that has to be done, but it must be noted that there is something. We have the tourism, we have the other segments, but we can't be a single or singular economy with just one working and one moving segment. The next thing about the global business sector is highly scalable. If you want to grow your tourism, you got to think plant, hotel rooms, etc. Mm-hmm. If you want to grow manufacturing, there's a build out in plant. Yep. If you want to grow agriculture, you got to invest more lands into agriculture. You got to clear it. You got to get it ready. You got to seed and all that.
Make sure you have the right products.
All the right products. If you want to scale up international business, all it takes for us to do, if we have the working platform, and we do, is for the practitioners to have a few good meetings with clients, a few good meetings with our regulators and government, and then the business is here and we upscale. Hopefully then we also add some skilled professional jobs and some administrative jobs to that. So there is so much value right at our fingertips that it is absolutely critical that government, everyone involved, do what they have to do to bring the growth to that sector. What I will say is that we all know that there are headwinds. There are externalities, there are variables out there that keep bombarding the small international financial center like Barbados. We know there's the OECD, there's a full list of acronyms who keep coming against us, it seems. The important thing is that with that, we have to do what I've been speaking of for the last year. We have to make sure that we master what we control. All right? We have to make sure that while there are things coming against us, that what we are able to define and make right and make exceptional here at home in Barbados, that we do that. So we have to master the products and services that we currently offer. We have to master the innovation and development of new products and services. Master transparency and compliance. We have to master the certainty of our regimes, our tax regime, the certainty of legislation, the certainty of processes and timing and costs in which we get things done. And one critical one, we have to master our educational system. Are we developing the next cadre of professionals to take up the opportunities that are existing out there and we want to bring to Barbados? And the next thing I want to say, finally, we have to master is our welcome.
Yes.
That is our immigration practices, how we invite people here and then how we process people. And I will say that there was a time where a basic work permit may have taken several months. I know I'm hearing now these things take several weeks opposed to months. So there have been improvements.
But more needs to be done.
But more needs to be done. Let's not think it's over. But we have seen some substantial strides, and with the strides that we have made, that's one reason we have been able to continue and offer great value to Barbados over the past 12 months.
Thank you, Derek. You've said quite a multiple, but I am going to go over to Professor Prasad and ask him. He talks a lot about mastering the things we can control, and I want you to know I'm going to steal that. Master the things we can control. So how is government putting a framework in place so that we can master the things we can control? We have no control over the blacklisting, although we will speak about that a little later. But what are the things that we can master, and what are we putting in place to make sure that we improve those things?
Great question, Jewel. And let me begin by thanking Keith and congratulating Keith and Sally and the publishing team for producing Barbados Business in this very difficult, trying environment. So really, it's very important. Thanks very much for getting that out. I think one of the things I want to touch on, Jewel, in answering your question is that too many Barbadians view international business as something other than them. It's out there, it's different, and yes, they hear how resilient it is. And to put some numbers around the things Derek was saying, Barbados has probably lost around $500 million, $500 million of tax revenues because of COVID. International business added to the tax revenues. It's the only sector in Barbados, the only sector that grew tax revenues bigger than previously. And a lot of that had to do, as Derek said, with the new taxation environment that Ron Toppin navigated in 2019. And that arrested a multi-year decline we had in tax revenues from that sector. So it's not inevitable that that sector would produce revenues. It's a new environment, very unusual for Barbados. We have the world's lowest corporate tax rates in the world amongst OECD compliant countries. Not within the region, not historically, in the world. That's a very unusual position for Barbados. And it takes time for the world to recognize that and to come. But last year, despite COVID, despite blacklisting, they came. But we got to do more than that. It's not just about tax and the decision to come. So it's a lot to do with training, it's a lot to do with doing business, it's a lot to do with technology. We're lucky we've got great broadband. I know all of us struggle with our broadband, but actually the infrastructure is there. We have to keep on pressing the companies to deliver better service at lower cost. But the infrastructure, we have fiber. Fiber is multi-fast. And we're coming up with some new technologies too. So we've got the basic infrastructure. Training. I hope every Barbadian goes on the new National Transformation Initiative website, Coursera. We used to spend the last decades trying to work out what should Barbadians study, as if we would know what they should study. You go on that website today, there are 50,000 courses. You choose what you study. You choose what you think the future is. And so the training is important. The broadband's important. But we've got to improve doing business in Barbados. Jewel, I remember when I first arrived back in 2008. Within a few years, I had to get a police certificate of good character, right? I'd never in my life had one of those before. I've been a managing director of a Fortune 500 company, never been asked for a police certificate. Executive of JP Morgan, State Street, never been asked. I go to the website. It says download this form and deliver it to the office. So I download the form, I fill it out, I go off to the office. I think I'll be clever. I'll be there half an hour earlier than everybody else. And I arrive there, and there's this half a mile long queue. And I'm thinking they must be queuing for something else because I'm here half an hour earlier than everybody else. And I marched entitled way towards the top of the queue. All the people in the queue are tutting, thinking new guy.
Yeah.
Now I march on top, produce my form, and I say, where do I put this form? Because I filled it out. And they looked at me and said, what is that form? I said, it's a form from your website. They said, no, you can't use that form. You can only use a form I'm going to give you, and I've numbered, and we don't deal with more than 50 in any one day, and you have to start at the back of the queue. I said, when did that queue start? And people around said 5 a.m. So people were missing half a day of their work, of childcare, of their energy, to simply put a form into a box. I got a police certificate of good character last week. Took me less than 2 hours. 5 minutes to fill out the form online, thanks to Kay McConney at the ministry, thanks to Marsha Carroll for getting the financing to do that. And then, so 5 minutes to fill out the form, and within 2 hours, I get the certificate. That's what we need to move to. And we're moving there.
We need to be doing a lot more of that.
Right. So that's happening with passport too. If you ever have to renew your passport, you'll see the change there.
I did that.
And what we're doing for the corporate office and the financial services. So you could come to Barbados wanting with all the excitement of an exciting idea, and it will take 7 weeks to get incorporated, to get regulated. That's going to sap your energy. And now we can commit to doing that in 5 days if you do a standard incorporation.
And is that standard incorporation form on the website?
Well,
so all I have
that's
to do
what
is
we're pushing.
Not print it and fill it out and scan it and
We
send
are
it
pushing,
back, but fill it
Kaipo,
out on the online.
Put it on the website, fill it out to show people that if you do a standard incorporation and everything checks out, because we've got to check you for money laundering, etc., that you could get incorporation within the day. And I'm chairman of the Financial Services Commission. We will commit to getting you a regulated license within 5 days. Normally takes 5 weeks. Within 5 days, if you do a standard incorporation. So those are the critical things: training, broadband, doing business, as well as having a great taxation.
Still with you, Avinash. One of the things Derek talked about is the headwinds of the OECD and all the other abbreviations and how they're constantly coming at us. How can the international business sector grow if we're forever fighting the blacklisting by the OECD, the EU, the UK? It seems as though as fast as we're off the list, we're on another one. So how can the sector grow if we're forever fighting these headwinds?
Well, of course, the essence of the listing is simply anti-competitive behavior. When we get on an AML blacklist, anti-money laundering blacklist, we are supposedly a threat to the global financial system. The world knows that the majority of money laundering takes place in London, in New York, in Zurich, and those countries, those places are never ever on that list. So this is really an attempt to be anti-competitive. But you don't get anywhere by being a moaning mini. We have to find a way of dealing with it. So there are two fundamental things. There was a fundamental issue that we charge international business a different tax rate than domestic business. And whatever happened, that was always going to be an issue. We dramatically changed that in 2019. The next thing we need to do, though, is we actually need to make sure that businesses, Jewel, are headquartered here. So New York and London, America under new President Biden and the UK may decide to have a global minimum corporate tax rate. That's the current thing being debated. Now, they could determine how they tax a Barbadian subsidiary of a British company. They can't determine how they tax a Barbadian headquartered company. So we need to bring these companies to Barbados to do real business in Barbados and be headquartered here. And for that, we need to make sure our people are well trained, we've got great technology, and doing business has to be much easier than it has been.
Keith, one of the things that we chatted about a lot before this actual media conference was telling those stories of people who moved to Barbados. They have their whole lives here, their families are here, their kids go to school here, they're investing in Barbados. How can we tell more of those stories?
First off, I think it's absolutely essential that we do tell those stories. Clearly, there are lots of work still to be done to improve business facilitation. Nobody's denying that. I would never underestimate the challenges ahead in that regard. Nevertheless, there are lots of positives existing at the same time, and that is clearly evidenced by a whole list of investors, which we don't have time for now, but basically people who came to Barbados originally on holiday, fell in love with the island and its people, decided they wished to invest in a property, possibly a home, did so. That then transitions to starting a business in Barbados. Business succeeds, and the people then, it becomes their life because their children grow up in Barbados. They do not wish to leave. They're happy at school. They've got lots of good friends. They enjoy the lifestyle. So those same investors who came perhaps 20 years ago are still here today and reinvesting. Now, when they reinvest, to me, that's a double endorsement because they are aware of the same challenges that we have discussed just earlier on. But despite them, or regardless of them, they still wish to be based in Barbados and to run their business from Barbados and to have their family living in Barbados.
Jill, I want to add something because that's a key, key part of what international business has been and what it will continue to be initially, but it's not where we want it to end up.
Yeah.
Okay.
We want international business to be about Barbadians exporting to the world, and that is the part of the theme of this year's 2021 Business Barbados. It's about Barbados to the world. So Barbadians who've got internationally accredited certification, selling their professional services down a broadband connection to Asia, Africa, Latin America, and the Americas. So it's about everyone in Barbados being part of the international business sector.
I'm liking that. One of the things we talked about was education, and is our basic education, primary and secondary education, and even tertiary. Is that taking us there? Because I'm sure there's somebody watching this who's saying, yeah, but everybody can be an accountant, everybody can be a lawyer, everybody can be an HR professional.
So,
and those are the kind of jobs that are created by the international business system.
It's not clear why everyone can't be, but let us broaden that group. Okay, so if you have a fancy watch in the world today, you service it every couple of years, you spend a fortune servicing it. You can spend as much as buying a new watch, servicing your fancy watch. They all go to one place, Zurich and Geneva, to be serviced. Why can they not come to Barbados? That is an international business that is not about accounting and law, about great skills. So when we talk about international business, it is not just those professions. It can be great skills with hands as well as with minds. When we build a building, Jewel, in Barbados, the value, we've got bricklayers. The value added is in what they call the MEPs, mechanical, electrical, plumbing. We import those people. So there's a lot we can do of exporting great skills that are not accounting and law. But you know what? In the future world, maybe we will all be those things. I think the future is a website called Upwork.com. Go on Upwork.com. What you'll find on Upwork.com is firms all over the world offering, they need people to do various things remotely. And they've got people all over the world offering to do those services. The key to the future is how are Barbadians able to access those websites and be in the value-added bits of that stuff, doing things that they get paid a lot, because one of the things about technology is it actually also lowers wages for other things. You know, Uber is fantastic for consumers, lousy if you're a taxi driver. So we want our people to be able to access new markets for their skills that people want to pay for. And those could be all of those skills, that we could be everywhere. Now, the final point I'd make is that we focus a lot on schools, and it's one of the reasons why we're looking at changing the 11 plus, because this notion that some people have failed and succeeded at the tender age of 11 is not helping, making sure that all of our people feel they can be anything they can be. But it's not just about school. It's not just about university. It's the greatest education is learning by doing. So that's why we need to work on apprenticeships, we need to work on training within jobs, and that's why Coursera and the National Transformation Initiative, I've mentioned it once before, but it is so important. People in work can go and Colin Jordan has negotiated that they get free access to 50,000 online courses. And they could transform themselves. It could be anything they want to be by doing that. And that's going to be the key to moving us to the next level.
Well, just before we go to our media partners who are also in our Zoom room, and with Derek, I'm going to come to you. That's one of the things you talked about. You talked about mastering the things we can control. Is this something we can control in terms of getting more Barbadians to see their skill set as not just based in Barbados, but only in Barbados, but offering to the world?
Well, the first thing I want to say about the educational system, we have a wonderful educational system, but yet still I have to, at 3 o'clock, take my kids and drive them to a private center to learn coding. All right? And they're going to do that at about $800 a term. Okay? Everyone can't do that. So until we get to a point where we're teaching things that are really relevant to this new world that we are living in, and there will be that shortcoming. But yes, you're right. We need to see that we are in a global marketplace now, okay? And I think more and more young people are seeing that. And more young people having that entrepreneurial spirit. They don't want to come and work for me, work for Avi, work for Key. They want to own their own business, grow their own business. So you're seeing more of that innovation and entrepreneurial spirit in the young people. If we can teach that, If we can inculcate that, and if we can get them technically trained in things other than the maths and the accounting or other, so we need the maths, sorry, other than the accounting or other traditional things, there's still a place, obviously, for that. But we need them to get, from the very earliest age, to be exposed to cutting-edge education, realizing, yes, that they do not have to work for a company that is based here in Barbados to catch a bus and go to work somewhere in Bridgetown or in Warrens, but they're from where they're at, they can work from home, or even as Afi said, can eventually export that skill, either via
and there's a fundamental
physically.
transformation that's taking place in education. And that's really key to bring home. In the past, we were short of education. So we spent a lot of time thinking about what do we do? Do we teach coding? Do we teach this? Do we teach that? We, professionals deciding what. That is no longer the game. Anyone can go online today and choose what they do. And what we need to do is be good at picking up, seeing what people are doing and choosing. So they're all doing courses in Python on coding now. And so we've got to make sure that we can encourage the opportunities for those who are coming out of that.
But can we also make sure that they have the facility? Because there's no point being able to access 50,000 courses if where I live I don't have access to decent broadband, or I don't have a device in which I can access it. So are we also putting those things in place?
Yes, and of course those things, coming back to echo Derek's word, things we're in control of, we're in control of that. Right? So on the Coursera course, for example, you could do a courses done by Microsoft, Google, as well as Pennsylvania University, as well as University of West Indies. So there's a whole variety of things. Now, we're trying to get complete blanket broadband. We're trying to negotiate that part of broadband is free, because we think broadband is the new rights for employment in the future world. It's the new modes of production. And we also need to make sure that everyone is connected. To be honest, Barbadian connectivity is pretty good in terms of the reach of broadband. We've got to make sure it is reliable and it is affordable. And it's inexpensive, yes. And the other thing is, of course, lots of effort done in trying to get tablets to everybody. And I think that's just one part. But that's a key thing we're trying to do.
Okay. We've got 1 minute left before we go over to the media. Derek, one of the other things you talked about is how it forced us to transform the way, COVID forced us to transform the way we worked. So you talked about how a lot of your members now work from home. Yeah. And there was a time when you could not convince anybody that you could work from home. People felt that if you were working from home, you weren't doing any work. So therefore, is that one of the things that we should continue to see as an opportunity that has come out of COVID? And instead of everybody leaving home at 7 o'clock in the morning, sitting in traffic to drop their kids off at a certain time, should we now look at ways in which we can make work easier instead of stressful?
Joel, I'm a cart now, but in my previous job before COVID, we were looking at remote work, and not remote work, alternative work, and bring it to the team. Alternative work means compressed week, compressed hours, flexi time, working remotely, a number of things. And the more we got into it, we got into law, we got into human resources, we got into rights, we got into work-life balance. And so many things made it impossible for us to implement and properly draft a regime that will allow staff to work from home. Along comes COVID. We do it in 1 week. We do it in 1 week, and there are no legal loopholes that you're falling through or anything like that.
The unions are on board.
Everybody's on board, and our members are working for a season. Maybe you were at 75%, then you got up to 80, then 90%, and then you're able to do pretty much everything.
The lasting obstacle, though, is that it's been great for all of us, right? Because we've got the homes with the space. Yeah. Right? There are a lot of people who don't have a space in the home. They've got young kids or old people they're caring for. Their homes are not set up, whether it is the right computer, the right broadband. But so we need to find a way, this new mode of working, that we empower everyone to be able to access it. Sorry.
Yeah. No, you're absolutely right. Perfect. He's my regulator. He can interrupt me anytime.
And on that note, gentlemen, we're going to go over to our media partners this morning who are joining us in our Zoom room. Good morning to you. Please say your name and the media house you're from and start to ask your questions.
Good morning. Paul Velmanzi from Nation News. Good morning to the panel. Quickly, just two questions on a point of clarification for me. You mentioned the resilience of the international business sector during the COVID-19 times. What I didn't quite get were the actual figures that would exemplify. Are you hearing me?
Not
Yes.
very well.
Vaguely.
The last part I missed.
Yes, the key part of your question we actually missed. The last bit.
Okay.
I think he
Any
talked a
better
little
now?
bit about
Resilience.
resilience, but he also talked about the numbers. You talked about the resilience, but
So what was the question?
Exemplify this resilience.
he wanted figures
And
that
in
would
addition-
exemplify the resilience.
I don't have
addition-
I don't have a precise figure, so I don't want to give you a number, but I would say that there's been a material, so over 10%, 15, 20% increase in tax revenues generated by the international business sector in the past 12 months. It's the only sector that's had that kind of increase. It is really quite material. It's over $50 million. It may be as much as $100 million, but I don't want to give you a number, and it's also an ongoing situation. I don't know if you've got some more up-to-date
Well,
figures.
Sam, I don't have the figures here, but what I can say is that we know for certain that there were increased registration in the insurance sector. The captive insurance sector. There was substantial increased registration in international business, the foreign currency permits. So there have been growth not just in the dollar numbers, but in the number of companies on the ground. And with that, let's not forget that over 4,000 people work directly in the international business sector. BBA's membership is around, I think, around 200, I'm losing it right now, around 200 companies. And they employ individuals. And there is growth in that area. So there's always a struggle quantifying exactly. I remember there was always a big back and forth between international business and tourism, even in quantifying hotel night stays, because tourism captured all of them, but we would always say that, but there are directors coming in for business, there are people coming for business. You know, we no longer have that discussion anymore. We look for synergies now under the
But we do have better
for
data. You know, for a long time, Jewel and Keith will remember this. We used to say 60% of corporate tax revenues came from the international business sector. And the number was suspiciously the same for like 15 years. And you kind of always know if the number's the same, do they really know? So when we actually did the numbers in 2019 to work out the consequences of going from a 30% tax rate to a 5% tax rate, it came out at 60%, and I was very pleasantly surprised.
Yeah.
This year, is, to the questioner's point, it will probably be over 70%. So this sector has proved to be it's not just standing still, it has actually progressed in a year in which we've been blacklisted, in a year of COVID. It's a resilient sector, and we need to have more resilient sectors.
Thank you. And your question had a part two?
Point to the question. I hope you're hearing me better now.
Yes.
Okay, great. Yes, there was a follow-up part to the question. What were the variables? You mentioned, as I asked for the figures just now, you gave me some insight, but what were the variables that distinguish this sector from other business sectors? Why were you able to add to the tax revenue where others had to decline?
Let me go.
Sure.
We continue to service our core income generating activities. We did not stop providing accounting services, business management services, trust services, corporate services, investment management, fund management. Our core income generating activities were not halted because people could not move. That's it.
You still need to pay your monthly insurance premium despite COVID.
Yeah.
You still need to file your annual accounts despite COVID. So the financial services, the international business sector is largely financial services. Globally, financial services held up very well because all of their activities, bank accounts, the markets, and insurance, actually, and we are a major insurance sector, those things were least affected by COVID.
Okay, I hope that answered your question. Any more questions from the media?
I have, if you could indulge me one last time, I
Yes.
have another question with regards to the blacklisting, the various blacklistings that we've been having. As I think Ms. Ford would have alluded to it in terms of the headwinds, and when one comes, another one goes, and the goalposts keep moving, keeps moving. How sustainable is this for us to continue to be moving the bar to adjust for ever moving goalposts? How sustainable is it?
So there are two lists, and of course, there are two lists. One is on tax, and one is on money laundering. As you say, the goalposts keep on moving. So we've been thinking deeply about how do you play a different game. If they keep on moving the goalposts in your playing field, you have to move to a different playing field. And so we realized that there were two fundamental things. And each time we're doing thinking, we're trying to moving to a point of greater resilience from them moving the goalposts. The first was, however we did acrobatics around the boundary of our tax system, nobody liked the fact that we charged international companies a different rate than we charged local companies. They accused us of stealing their tax revenues because you're being preferential to their companies. So now we've got rid of that, we cannot be accused of that. The international companies and local companies pay the same tax rate. But that wasn't enough. So the other way in which we are now moving to a more resilient place is Britain and America and France and Japan cannot tell us how Barbadian companies in Barbados doing activities in Barbados are taxed. They can tell us how a British company's subsidiary in Barbados is taxed, how an American company's subsidiary, how they tax that when they go back to the US. So that's why we need to bring headquarters. So the fundamental way we're going to deal with all that's happening in taxes ultimately is no ring fencing, and actually doing more substantive activity. And the 12-month stamp has showed us this is possible. People want to be doing substantive international activity from a Barbados base. And that's not just about foreigners, that's about local people going abroad from Barbados.
Okay, thank you very much, Professor Prasad. Our media partners, any other questions?
Yes, Marlon Madden here, Barbados Today. I have a follow-on to that. In relation to something Mr. Prasad said earlier as well, in getting more companies headquartered in Barbados, how do you propose, in addition to the training that you suggested, how do you propose we go about that? And could you speak to any plans that we have, or what work is currently being done to get this?
Did you hear the question?
I think the question was, if we do want to bring companies to headquarter in Barbados, what do we need to do that? And the key thing is, well, firstly, you're not going to come here unless our people have the skills you need. So training, but not just training, certification that you understand. That's why we're pushing the Coursera courses, because that's internationally accredited. And that's why we're pushing training that you get accreditation. But it's actually a key thing is doing business. Why would you headquarter in Barbados if it takes you 7 weeks to just get your name verified for a new subsidiary? Or it takes you 12 weeks to get a new insurance subsidiary regulated or licensed. So we've got to be much better at that. And we've actually, when I arrived at the FSC, I remember people used to complain of how long it took to get a license. And I was saying to people, well, it must be better because I'm now there, right? So after a while, failing to convince people that would do enough, I actually did a study, and I found that it was taking 12 weeks to get a new FSC license and 15 weeks to renew your FSC license. It's actually easier to ditch the old one and go for a new one. We decided, why do you have to renew your license? Why do you renew your license? So we've got rid of renewals. Renewals has gone from taking 15 weeks to 0. All you have to do is inform us as soon as there's any change in your license. I mean, if you don't inform us, you lose your license. 15 weeks to 0. And the new license, which takes 12 weeks to get in 2018, is now taking 4 weeks And I think we can get it down to 5 days. That's how you bring headquarters to Barbados.
I want to
Sure.
add. Sorry,
Yeah,
go ahead,
Keith,
Keith.
Well-
Keith and then Derek.
I would just like to say that I think it's important for people watching the show today to understand that we already have examples of international companies that have relocated to
Oh, yeah.
Barbados.
Oh, yeah.
And in due course have brought their headquarters to Barbados. And if not the entire operation, then certainly major portions of. Example being Gildan, the leisure were manufacturers, Canadian company, but their global sales and marketing operation is headquartered in Barbados. And if I can give a more specific example, McKinney Rogers, with Damien McKinney, he came here to live, first of all, to run his company from Barbados. But then within 12 months, and we're talking about 20 years ago, within 12 months he brought his management team to live in Barbados and run operations from Barbados. In due course, that company was purchased by a major global player. They themselves were an international business, but a major player bought them out. And Damien McKinney stayed in Barbados. His family were here. He then invested in a local product, that being Cockspur, the Cockspur brand. And since then, and I think this is really interesting, and it's featured in the publication, so I know I'm not going too public with it in terms of Damien. He was approached by Stolichnaya, the famous vodka company.
That's right.
And asked would he become their global CEO. And Damien said he would love to accept the challenge, but one of his stipulations in accepting that challenge was that he had to carry on residing in Barbados. And they agreed. So we now have, essentially he's a Barbadian now, he's been here long enough, running a global company from his home in Barbados. It's a great example. You said before, how do we get the message out to the world? We tell stories. The best way to tell the history of any country is to tell stories of people.
Yes.
The best believable stories are the real stories of real life people, such as Damien's, such as Gildan, such as LensTech, one of the world's leading manufacturers of ocular lenses, is based in Barbados. It's manufactured in Barbados. And if I can use that as a link just to go back what you said about Barbadians being involved, at last count, LensTech had about 400 employees, and all but 2 of them were Barbadian. And in terms of, and that was from maintenance all the way up to the leading scientists. And they were recruiting biotech graduates from UWI. They give their service to LensTech. Often they then become headhunted by other companies outside Barbados. The deal that they've got, and it's kind of an unofficial agreement with Ian Hicklin, the GM, is, okay guys, we understand you're going to do 3 years here, develop a new CV, you're going to be seriously headhunted by international companies. The deal is, it's okay to go, but find your own replacement from UWI. So there's a steady stream of science graduates developing to world-class standards. And LensTech is already at world-class standard. It's important that people out there know that this is actually happening already.
Very much so.
We just need to attract more.
It can be a bit of an invisible sector. And so, yes, the media are right to question what more are we doing to get more. But let us not forget Keith's point. And it goes back to that. To this year, 70% of corporate tax revenues have come from that sector, if not more. That sector's here. It's employing a lot of people. We have to grow it, but we also need to preserve it and protect it and highlight that it's here.
Okay, final question from the media.
Okay, I'll take it. We're talking about the growth, and for last year, you say you don't have figures, but could you say then if there's a measurement in place or some system to find out what the impact has been like on the different campaigns, publications, the trust that we're putting forward to get more businesses here? What has the impact been like over the years, let's say in the last 5 years?
We have a breakdown of corporate tax revenues from this sector. We have a trend, so it used to be at the high point, so before 2018, the average was around 60%. But it was steadily declining for a number of reasons. The global financial crisis didn't help, but our doing business record was getting worse and worse. We ended up the 129th place on doing business, and that ate into the corporate tax revenues. I think it went down to around 50%. It's now back around 70 over the past 2 or 3 years. These are unusual events that have taken place, but I think that's a large amount of that was the new tax system put in 2019. But if we're going to preserve that and grow that, we have to be better at doing business. We've started police certificate of good conduct, passports, licensing, but we've got to continue to be better. Much more to be done.
Thank you very much. Well, thank you for our media partners. In the last few minutes we have before we wrap up, quick questions, gentlemen. Are there any areas of the business that we could do better? I've been hearing about mutual funds and that we need to do more with mutual funds. Derek?
Oh, definitely. But what we need to do, though, is look at global trends. There's a lot of innovation out there. And I know Invest Barbados has a pipeline of opportunities coming in. It's medical, it's headquarters services, it's outsourcing services, and many other things. So important to note, while financial sector may be the biggest, there's so much more that can be done from Barbados. Yes, mutual funds and financial services are under the purview of Avi at the FSC. We continue to be strong in investment management, but yet there's a so lot more we can do with that legislation. We've done a lot before legislation, but there are things that can be tweaked to improve our offering in the mutual fund space. But it's not just financial services, okay? We've got to make sure we understand that there's so much that can be done from Barbados.
Keith, one of the things I want to talk about as well is how some of these investors that start in Barbados in financial services branch out into other areas. I understand there are a couple of companies. One is into agriculture, so he's building hurricane-proof greenhouses and he's doing growing fruits and vegetables that normally we import, so we're cutting down on our food import bill, etc. Another one is investing in solar panels, etc. So how are we seeing investment in Barbados, but on a different level and in different sectors other than financial services?
Again, I think that is very, very important, and that's another program where we bring in the various sectors. So even tourism, renewables, medicinal cannabis, everything. There's so many different opportunities that we could bring in and kind of put under the international business umbrella, in the sense that any business globally is international. Well, the other good example of I mentioned Gildan before, and I don't think I'm out of order to say that the same principle behind Gildan is the man who's invested in Apes Hill. And he's known Barbados for over 20 years. So again, that kind of an endorsement goes a long, long way. I think one of the things that we should do, I would really like to see us working a bit more closely together, public sector, private sector, anybody at all involved in international business, to create the collective message and send it out in a very efficient, targeted manner to the kind of audience we wish to reach. And I would just draw quickly to the example of the Welcome Stamp program, which worked extremely well. And everybody must be aware of the powerful impact of the Prime Minister being live on TV around the world in some of the leading international media houses. When you have the right story to tell, you can reach the right people. And that's what I think I would like to see us focusing more on to try and achieve together.
Okay, gentlemen, the last few minutes we have, final comments. I'm going to start with you, Derek.
Sure. They will come because Barbados works. We're not there yet. The job is not done. Some of my members may watch this and say, Derek, why aren't you complaining about ABCD? But Barbados works. And the evidence that Barbados can work, everybody talk about the welcome stamp, fantastic. My celebration of that initiative is that it evidences that we can get things done. That was conceptualized, and within weeks, it was rolled out. Website, legislation, the offering. If we can move that from conception to to reality in such a short space of time, why are we not putting that same energy on the other segments of the platform that we need to be efficient and effective to grow the sector? But they will come because Barbados can work if we just believe it and implement it. We're going to continue to add great value to every person in this economy, not just a few in the sector, but it renounces to agriculture, to schooling, to manufacturing, to housing, to car rentals, to everything. So let's just laser-like focus on the sector and the platform and get it done.
Okay. Avinash?
If there is a silver lining in the tragedy of COVID, it is, as Derek said, a realization of how much we can do, how much we are captains of our fate. People set up businesses in hours and days when previously it took weeks and months, sometimes years. So we know you can do it, so we need to go and do it. We've made some progress, we need to make more. I think the other thing that Derek has said that's a very important point is international business is considered to be insurance and finance, but it's partly Ross University, which has increased opportunities for Barbadians. They're helping us build a nursing training element. They're helping us with our anti-money laundering training. We have a medical center in Belleville where people come. We're one of the region's main fertility clinic areas and other specialties. So these businesses actually improve opportunities for us. But the final point I want to make is international business. We're all part of the international business sector. We're a small place. We have to be global in our outlook, global in our standards, and every Barbadian must think about the world as their marketplace, as a place for their ideas, their creativity, and we need to have the technology to help them and the ability to doing business to help them, as well as the training. This is bringing Barbados to the world, the theme of this year's Business Barbados magazine. Thank you, Keith.
Thank you. Keith, you get the last word.
Last word, perhaps in recent years, and even more so during and because of COVID, people out there globally are realizing there's a lot more to life than business. Mm-hmm. And one of the wonderful things about Barbados is you can establish and manage a successful international business and enjoy your life at the same time. Generally speaking, these investors come here and live, and they find out that Barbados is a happy and a healthy place to live and a wonderful, wonderful location to raise families. And to me, that is perhaps the best recommendation of all.
Okay, thank you very much, gentlemen. You've been watching Barbados to the World, the Business Barbados Media Conference. My guests are Derek Cummings, the president of BIBA, Professor Avinash Prasad, he's the special envoy to Prime Minister Mia Amor Motley, and Keith Miller, the publisher of Business Barbados. I want to thank you for joining us today. This is only the first of many conversations to come, and we'll be doing more another time. Enjoy the rest of the day. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.